Welcome back to the deep dive. It is Sunday morning, March 1st, 2026.
Morning.
Grab your coffee, maybe take a deep breath, because today we are looking at the week ahead. And honestly, if you've been glancing at the headlines over the weekend, you probably already know this isn't just another week on the calendar.
No, it really isn't. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're feeling a little bit of whiplash from the last 48 hours, you are definitely not alone.
Yeah.
We're in a moment where it feels like, the chessboard has just been flipped over entirely.
Yeah.
And everyone is scrambling to figure out where the pieces landed before the markets open tomorrow.
That's a great image. And usually when we do these Sunday previews, we tend to look at things in silos, right?
Right.
We talk about the economy over here in one bucket. Maybe you talk about tech news over there or foreign policy in a third bucket. But the core thesis for this deep dive is that those silos are they're gone.
They completely evaporated last week. You literally cannot understand one of these threads without the others right now. We have three massive stories: a military story, a technological story, and an economic one. And this week, they all just crash into each other.
Okay, so let's lay out the map for the listener. What are the three specific collisions we're watching?
Well, first, we have a wartime economy colliding with a massive, data-dense week of peacetime economic data.
Which is going to be messy.
Very. Second, we have a legal battle between an AI giant and the Pentagon that basically redefines what national security even means in the tech space.
Right.
And third, we have the most important waterway in the world, the Strait of Hormuz, functionally closed, while OPEC Plus meets today to try and do math that just no longer adds up.
It honestly sounds like the plot of a geopolitical thriller, but it's actually our Monday morning reality. So our mission today isn't just to report the news to you, it's to get you ready.
Exactly.
The old order is breaking, and the data we start getting tomorrow morning is going to tell us exactly how fast it's breaking. So let's start with the first thread. We're calling this the fog.
The fog is the perfect name for it, because we are walking into a week that is incredibly dense with economic data, specifically the ISM Manufacturing Report tomorrow, and then the big jobs report on Friday. But the context underneath that data has completely shifted.
Right, the ground is moving. So let's start with tomorrow morning, Monday, March 2nd. The Institute for Supply Management, the ISM, drops the manufacturing PMI for February. Now, normally, for most people, this is just a boring number on a ticker tape.
Yeah, easy to ignore.
But let's look at what happened last month to understand why this specific release matters so much. January's reading came in at 52.6.
Which was a massive shock to the system. I mean, remember, anything over 50 means the manufacturing sector is expanding.
Right.
That 52.6, that was the first time we saw actual expansion in 12 months. New orders were up, production was up. It looked, on paper, like American manufacturing was finally waking up after a year-long nap.
It really looked like a turnaround. I remember the headlines were all celebrating, resilient American industry and all that. And there is always but when we dig into these things, let's unpack this. There was a detail in that report that I think almost everyone glossed over.
Yes.
Susan Spence, the ISM chair, she added a very specific caveat.
She did. And it was the kind of comment that honestly should have stopped everyone in their tracks. She said, yes, things are up, but a lot of this is just front-loading.
Front-loading. Translate that for us. What does that actually look like on the ground?
It's panic buying. Pure and simple.
Wow.
Companies were looking at the horizon, seeing potential tariff hikes coming down the pike, seeing the geopolitical temperature rising, and they just rushed to buy inventory before prices went up.
So it wasn't real demand?
No, not organic demand. It wasn't that they had customers lining up around the block to buy their widgets. It's that they were terrified the raw materials would be too expensive by March.
So it's basically like buying 20 cases of bottled water before a hurricane hits. It looks like incredible sales growth for the water company, but it's actually just driven by fear.
It's an artificial sugar rush. So the huge question for tomorrow morning is, was January a fluke? If that ISM number drops back down below 50, we know the growth was just a one-time panic buy.
But what if it accelerates? What if that number actually goes up tomorrow?
Then we have to ask a much harder question. Is that wartime restocking starting to hit the books?
Oh.
Is this defense procurement ramping up to meet the needs of the conflict? Because the composition of that number matters way more than the headline. We're trying to measure a peacetime economy, but the inputs are rapidly shifting to a wartime footing.
Which makes the data incredibly messy to interpret.
Yeah.
And speaking of messy data, that brings us to the other massive release this week, Friday's jobs report.
Yeah, this is where things get really sticky.
Because last month, the headline number was 130,000 jobs added. And it looked great. I mean, it
Right.
was almost double the forecast.
It did look great. It was what they call a Goldilocks number.
Mm.
Not too hot, not too cold, just right.
Right.
Until you read the fine print. And this is the detail that changes the entire narrative for me. The Bureau of Labor Statistics did a benchmark revision for the entire year of 2025.
And what did they find?
They revised total job growth down by 400,000 jobs.
Whoa. 400,000 jobs just vanished from the official record.
Poof. Gone. It turns out they were never there in the first place. We spent all of last year thinking the economy was adding about 49,000 jobs a month.
Which is a healthy, steady market.
Exactly. But it turns out we were only averaging about 15,000 a month.
That is a radically different picture. I mean, 15,000 jobs a month, that's barely treading water.
It's essentially stagnant. It means the labor market entering this current crisis is much, much softer than any of the headlines suggested. And think about the consumer impact here. If job security is lower than we thought, spending is going to be lower than we thought.
So let's connect the dots for the listener here. We have a potentially fake manufacturing boom driven by panic, colliding with a labor market that's missing 500,000 jobs we thought we had. And now we layer on a full-blown geopolitical conflict.
This is exactly what we mean by the fog. We have these economic models, like Deloitte's, right? They were forecasting 1.9% GDP growth for 2026.
Right.
But those models were built before the Strait of Hormuz closed. They were built before the government started drastically shifting its spending priorities. Remember that Kellogg study we looked at in a previous deep dive?
Oh, the one about the historical cost of war.
Yeah. It analyzed 135 different wars. And it showed that typically government revenue falls about 14% during a conflict, while spending rises 9%.
That is a massive structural gap to fill.
And governments usually fill it with money printing. So you have inflationary pressure from the war spending crashing straight into a softening labor market.
That smells a lot like stagflation.
It really does. The market is going to try to read Monday's ISM and Friday's jobs numbers using peacetime logic. But the inputs have fundamentally changed.
That is unsettling, to say the least. But it's better to know your compass is broken than to confidently walk off a cliff. Okay, let's pivot to the second thread. And this one, honestly, it feels like a sci-fi novel, but it is happening right now in federal court. The battle between Anthropic and the Pentagon.
This is huge. And I really don't think the broader market realizes just how unprecedented this move is. This isn't just a standard lawsuit. It's setting a precedent for the entire tech industry.
So let's do a quick recap for anyone who might have missed the details last week. The Pentagon wanted advanced AI. They went to Anthropic. And Anthropic said, sure, we'll do it, but we have conditions.
Right.
They specifically wanted clauses prohibiting mass domestic surveillance and fully autonomous weapons without human oversight.
Yeah, they stood on their principles. And the Pentagon essentially said, no thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave the contract to OpenAI instead, which, that happens. That's just business.
But does it end there?
No, it didn't. On Friday, February 27th, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth escalated this to a completely different level. He officially designated Anthropic a supply chain risk to national security.
Supply chain risk. See, that sounds so bureaucratic. It sounds like they, found a bad batch of microchips or something. But in reality, that's a nuclear option, isn't it?
It is absolutely the nuclear option. To give you the historical context, that specific label, supply chain risk, is almost exclusively reserved for foreign adversaries.
Like who?
Think Huawei. The U.S. government used that label because they argued Huawei was acting as a front for Chinese intelligence.
And now they're applying that exact same label to an American company, a company based in San Francisco.
An American company that simply refused to remove safety guardrails from a proposed contract. It's entirely unprecedented. They're effectively putting Anthropic in the exact same regulatory bucket as a hostile foreign intelligence asset.
Just because of a contract dispute.
Yes.
And the consequences of this are immediate, right? It's not just a matter of the Pentagon saying, well, we won't buy from you anymore.
No, it's so much broader than that. That designation acts like a contagion. It means any military contractor is now legally barred from doing commercial business with Anthropic.
Wow. So let's play this out. If I'm Lockheed Martin or Boeing or even just a smaller regional defense supplier, and I happen to use Claude Anthropic's AI for my internal emails or writing code,
You probably have to rip it out of your systems immediately. Because if you have a designated supply chain risk embedded in your IT infrastructure, you are suddenly non-compliant with your own defense contracts.
Which means you can't get paid.
Exactly. You cannot bill the federal government if you are using what they classify as compromised software.
That is a massive economic ripple effect. You've probably got corporate legal teams all across the defense industrial base working through the weekend right now, just trying to figure out if they have to dump their software by Monday morning.
Undoubtedly. And Anthropic isn't just taking this lying down either. They're suing the government. We expect the formal filing to drop this week.
And what's their legal argument?
Their core argument is that the statute requires actual evidence of adversarial exploitation, or at the very least, congressional notification, neither of which happened here.
Meaning, the government needs proof that Anthropic is actually being manipulated by an enemy state.
Right. You can't just slap this devastating label on a company because you're mad at them during negotiations. Anthropic is arguing that the move is purely retaliatory and punitive.
It's incredibly ironic, isn't it? Because at the exact same time this legal war is happening, the Army is piloting their new smart contracting initiative, where they are literally using AI to speed up how they buy things.
It is the textbook definition of irony. They are using AI to streamline their bureaucracy while simultaneously using that same bureaucracy to blacklist a vendor for trying to make the AI safer.
Unbelievable.
And the broader market is watching this very closely.
Right, because CrowdStrike reports earnings on Tuesday, don't they?
Yes, they do. And the whole cybersecurity and enterprise tech sector is rattled by this Anthropic news. Because if the government can weaponize procurement politics like this against one major player, every tech company is suddenly looking over their shoulder asking, are we next?
It adds a completely new political risk premium to the entire sector that just wasn't priced in last week.
Exactly. It's a fundamental governance story, masquerading as a tech story.
Okay, let's move to the third thread. And this one is arguably the most immediate for anyone listening who drives a car or heats a home or buys anything that travels on a ship. The Strait of Hormuz.
The absolute lifeline of the global energy market. And the news here is critical for this week.
We need to be very clear about the facts on the ground here. As of this morning, Sunday, March 1st, the strait is functionally closed. Now, I say functionally because there hasn't been an official legal decree, right? Iran hasn't put up a giant closed sign.
Correct. Iran hasn't signed a piece of paper declaring it closed. But in the global shipping world, paper doesn't actually matter. Insurance matters.
Okay, explain that dynamic for us. Why does the insurance stop the ship?
Because modern maritime shipping entirely runs on credit and liability coverage. If you cannot get insurance underwriters to cover your hull and your cargo, you simply do not sail, period.
Because it's too expensive if something goes wrong.
Exactly. The financial risk of losing a $100 million vessel plus the cargo is way too high for any captain or shipping conglomerate to take on themselves, and the underwriters are pulling their coverage for that route.
And we have concrete evidence of this happening right now. This isn't just a hypothetical fear.
No, we are tracking the individual ships. The Desh Abiman, which is a massive tanker, literally made a U-turn mid-transit.
Just turned around.
The KHK Empress, which was carrying crude oil, completely redirected. Major logistical players like Hapag-Lloyd and Nippon Yusen have officially suspended all transits. And on top of that, you have credible reports of Iran's maritime radio broadcasts actively warning vessels, quote, no ship is to pass.
So the ships are stopping. But here is the twist that makes this entire situation so confusing for the markets. OPEC Plus is meeting today, right now, as we speak.
They are, and this meeting was supposed to be completely routine. They had planned a very modest production boost, maybe 137,000 barrels per day.
Just a little tweak to the dials.
Exactly, just fine-tuning. But Reuters is reporting this morning that the discussion inside the room has shifted drastically. Completely. Now they're reportedly talking about adding 411,000 barrels per day, or possibly even more. They are desperately trying to signal to the world that they will flood the market to stabilize prices.
And here's the real aha moment for this deep dive. This is the big insight for this segment. Why might that OPEC flood not matter at all?
Because you have to think about the physical reality of this. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they can pump all the oil they want. They can turn the valves wide open today. But if the ships cannot safely move through the Strait of Hormuz,
the oil just sits there.
It just sits in the tanks at the port. It fills up local storage, and it goes nowhere. And this is the critical difference between a supply shock and a logistics crisis.
Break that down for us, because that distinction seems vital.
A supply shock is when the oil literally doesn't exist, say a major pipeline blows up or a well runs dry.
Mm,
Markets actually know how to price a supply shock. You just bid up the price of whatever oil is left.
right, standard supply and demand.
But this is a logistics crisis. The oil is there, it exists, it's being pumped, but it is entirely stranded. And financial markets do not know how to accurately price a logistics crisis of this magnitude.
Because simply increasing the production quota doesn't actually get the physical product to the end customer. It's like printing $1 trillion but closing all the banks.
Precisely. The mechanism of delivery is broken. And we are already seeing that deep confusion reflected in the price. Brent crude closed on Friday at $73. But if you look at weekend retail trading platforms right now, they're showing it up 8% already.
And the institutional warnings are severe. Barclays is warning that we could hit $80 plus almost immediately. JM Financial is projecting $90 to $100 a barrel if this closure sustains for any length of time.
And remember, we aren't just talking about crude oil here. It's liquefied natural gas from Qatar. It's jet fuel. It's naphtha. This is a full-blown supply chain heart attack. If that strait stays functionally closed for even a week, we are looking at severe physical energy shortages in parts of Europe and Asia, regardless of what OPEC decides to do on paper today.
So just to recap the sheer scale of what we're facing, we have the economic fog making our standard peacetime data totally unreliable. We have a massive legal precedent in AI that's shaking up the entire defense and tech sector, and we have a paralyzed logistics crisis in the Strait of Hormuz.
It's a lot.
It is a lot, but those aren't the only things happening this week. Let's do a quick rapid fire on the convergence. What else should the listener be watching as the week unfolds?
First up, keep an eye on corporate earnings. Specifically, watch Target on Monday.
Target. Why Target specifically amidst all this macro chaos?
Because Target is the ultimate canary in the coal mine for the American consumer. They sell primarily discretionary goods, clothes, home decor, electronics. After months of flat retail sales generally, their earnings report is going to tell us exactly how the average person is handling sustained price pressure.
Right.
If Target misses their numbers, that soft labor market theory we talked about with the 400,000 missing jobs, it gets a lot more hard evidence behind it.
And Sea Limited is reporting on Monday too, right?
Yes, they are. And that's incredibly important for the Southeast Asian angle. With all the global shipping disruptions, Sea Limited's numbers will give us a very clear window into how commerce is actually moving or not moving in that specific part of the world.
What about on the diplomatic front? Is there any hope on the horizon for de-escalation?
Well, keep a very close eye on Abu Dhabi. There are supposed to be Russia-Ukraine peace talks happening there in early March.
Well, notice he said supposed to be.
Exactly. The really big question this week is, do those talks get postponed? Because if they get pushed back, it sends a chilling signal that the international community simply doesn't have the geopolitical bandwidth to handle two major crises at the exact same time.
Yeah.
If all the top diplomats are totally consumed with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, Ukraine might just get sidelined.
That is a deeply sobering thought. If there isn't enough bandwidth for peace negotiations, that's a very dangerous leading indicator. And finally, what about Europe?
We get the Eurozone flash CPI on Tuesday,
Uh-huh.
and then the IFI European Summit runs Wednesday and Thursday.
And what's the main focus there?
Defense readiness. Europe is rapidly waking up to the reality that their traditional security architecture is crumbling, and they need to figure out how to pay for a new one.
Okay. Let's try to bring this all home. Let's synthesize this for you, the listener, who is about to walk into Monday morning. It is an overwhelming amount to process.
It is. But if you step back, here's the coherent picture. You have a U.S. manufacturing sector that might just be fake expanding because everyone is terrified of incoming tariffs.
Right.
You have a labor market that is demonstrably missing 400,000 jobs we thought we had in the bank, meaning the everyday consumer is much weaker than the baseline projections thought.
You have the leading American AI safety company suddenly labeled a national security risk, not for leaking state secrets, but basically for refusing to build unchecked surveillance tools.
And to top it all off,
Yeah.
you have millions of barrels of crude oil stuck sitting in storage tanks because the maritime insurance companies simply won't let the ships sail through the strait.
I think the completely natural human reaction to all of this is to desperately look for a historical model that explains it, to look for a clean precedent.
And that is the trap. That's the final provocative thought I want to leave you with today. The models are broken. We are stubbornly trying to apply peacetime economic theory to a wartime logistics crisis. And it just doesn't work. The uncertainty itself is the actual story right now. This week isn't about finding the right data point or the right number. It's about aggressively watching the gap.
The gap between what the old models say should be happening and what the new reality actually is on the ground.
Exactly. When you see that ISM manufacturing number flash tomorrow morning, or when you see the big jobs number on Friday, do not just take them at face value. Ask yourself, does this model account for those 400,000 missing jobs? Does this forecast account for a functionally closed Strait of Hormuz?
Because if it doesn't, it's noise.
Exactly. If you actively look at the incoming data through that specific lens, you won't just be reacting to the headlines, you'll actually be prepared.
And that is always the goal here, to make sure you are the one who is ready for the week that nobody else is ready for. Thank you for listening, for taking the time to do this deep dive with us. Keep your eyes on the underlying data. Don't blindly trust the headlines, and we will catch you in the next one.
See you then.